Hello and thank you for joining in on today's training. Heart & Solutions is a proud provider of CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below to find and take your quiz.
So this is a training for play therapy techniques for BHIS professionals. Play therapy is it's a specialty in therapy it's a specialty on the therapy side, meaning that we have to get extra training. And I'm in the process of getting that certification. Colleen has that certification, but you don't have to have the certification to use the techniques. And my time talking with a lot of BHIS professionals, and then I don't know if you know this, but I was BHIS for a little while. It's really helpful to have some of those in your back pocket. And there's a great way to get some of those techniques. So put this together to try and make it easier. That big questionnaire I sent out, I took all the information from it and I looked at it, and a lot of things that we talked about were managing resistance with both our clients and our parents, ways of using our techniques in session. A lot of people telling me like, I've run out of ideas and I don't know how to do more stuff or make it more informative. And so we're going to go through some of that. And then we are going to talk about 3 interventions, one for 4 to 7-year-olds, one for 7 to 11-year-olds, and one for 12 to 18-year-olds. And I like to break it up like that because typically 4 to 7, I find in my office act very similar, 7 to 11, and then once you're in 12, you're puberty and things take a downturn. But these are just vague guidelines. People are at different spots. We will talk a little bit about the fact that trauma can change our presenting age. We might be chronologically 7, but acting like a 4-year-old. We might be chronologically 12, but acting like a 7-year-old. And so these are guidelines. Don't ever be like, oh, I can't use it on this 8-year-old because it's for 4 to 7. No. I use play therapy techniques on adults. So these are just rough guidelines.
Okay.
Training schedule. We're going to work a lot on exploring resistance in clients and parents. Then we're going to have a small section on discussing the benefits of play therapy. And then we're going to talk a lot about techniques and interventions. When I say techniques and interventions, we're really going to lean heavily on the technique side, which means I'm not going to give you a lot of things that you can go and exactly do in the session, but I'm going to help you learn how to take stuff you already do and change it one way or the other, depending on if you have a more resistant client or a less resistant client. How can you change that? Okay, therapeutic resistance in parents and children doing BHIS. What is resistance?
Like when a parent or child doesn't want to engage in the session or you're having a hard time getting them involved.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we see. The definition that's best for it, it's kind of a loosely defined thing, is that it's any behavior that prevents change in the client, therapeutic change in the client. And this is true from the parents too, because sometimes even though the parents aren't our clients, they have behaviors that can prevent therapeutic change in our clients. And so, and I'm bringing this up, there might be a quiz at the end of this, so it's open note. It's loosely defined as this, and just know that whenever we're talking about resistance, we're just looking at a behavior that's preventing that change. Another thing to note about this is that you might get resistance in different parts of your treatment plan. So you might have a client that's really, really good to responding to all of your therapeutic changes, all of the stuff that you're doing with them in regards to focus. But they're really bad at doing it in regards to sharing emotions. And you're getting a lot of resistance on that side. So a client can be good in one part and resistant in others, and it just kind of changes throughout. Resistance is also not a constantly building thing. It's more of a continuum. We see people go from more resistant to less resistant to more resistant all throughout the same session sometimes, but through the same treatment period. If you have gotten to a point where you're like, oh, this is getting better, and then it gets worse, that's normal. That's part of resistance. And it actually usually is a good thing because it means that you have gotten to a next level and you just have to work your way through that one again. Okay, types of resistance in clients. So shoot me out some ideas. We'll take turns since there's only two of us.
Mm.
All right, what's the type of resistant clients you have? Like a behavior they have?
Like some of my older clients are just on their phones or on technology. They don't want to
That's
engage in like talking or socializing.
okay. That's a popular one. Okay, I have had ones where they just turn into their chair or wherever they're sitting and they just won't look or respond. What you're describing is kind of that ignoring the provider that we see in older kids. They, can use stuff around them, most likely phones, tablets, computers, to kind of just ignore you, push you away, not engage with you. Littler kids are a lot more likely to just kind of like flop on the floor or literally turn their bodies from you. That's how they do their ignoring. But it's the same behavior. We have only engaging in some aspects of service. So you might have a client who's like, no, I want to play go fish again over and over. And you're trying to use a different intervention. And so they're refused to engage in anything that isn't one specific part. Wanting to control the activity. If you haven't run into one of these kids yet, they're my favorites because they were really, really difficult for me when I started. But they're the ones who are like changing the rules to the game or sneaking cards or
Yeah.
they'll do anything they can to control the activity. Sometimes they go to the point where they'll start drawing on your sheet of the paper. So if you're drawing, they start coloring your stuff.
Hmm.
They just need that level of control. Arguing with the provider doesn't happen a lot with the younger kids, a lot more common with the older kids. And most of the time it's less arguing and more bargaining. Like, my friend's over, so let's just meet for like 30 minutes. You get a
Yeah.
lot of that kind of behavior. Meltdowns to avoid the activity, that's a younger kid one. Running away from the provider is pretty rare, but I've had a couple of runners, so it can happen. You're in a house with them, hopefully, or in a location with them, so it's a little bit easier. They usually feel more comfortable in their house. And then not devoting attention to the activity or interacting on like a surface level. So they might be kind of just going through the motions. So that's type of resistance in children. Type of resistance in parents is next, because they're going to give us resistance too. So we have parents that refuse to participate. They just don't want to be a part of it. Sometimes you have those parents that like ghost you, like you're wondering if they're even in the house anymore because they are just gone and you can't find them. Hyper focused on failure. I hear a lot about this with you guys where like you do get progress in the client and then all of a sudden the parents like, yes, but they did this, but they did that. I mean, sure, they said thank you, which was one of their goals, but then they did this and that.
Hmm.
And they usually say that in front of the client, which is super disheartening.
Yeah.
Micromanaging the client, where they're kind of like in the session constantly and they're trying to control the emotions of the client while you're there. And then arguing with the provider. And parents are much more likely to argue with the provider. I know that there have been some examples of when parents have felt that like the goals weren't hard enough. And so they were arguing with the provider for more difficult goals or
Mm.
that the kid wasn't trying. That's another argument we hear a lot of like, they're fooling you. They're just being lazy. They're not trying. And so like they'll try and get you on their side to be
Yeah.
like, you need to punish them. And you're like, no. And then you have people who just don't believe in change. And a lot of that is because they're really disheartened. These are like your really, really bad cases where the kid's been transferred through a couple schools or they have been through a couple of foster parents, and people have just kind of stopped believing that they have the ability to change, and so they aren't open to it and they don't look for it anymore, which is tough. And I think that's really tough on the kiddos. Okay, so reasons for resistance in clients. One is going to be developmentally appropriate resistance, or that fight for autonomy. So young children are in a developmental appropriate age for resistance, like I think it's 2 to 5-ish is the age when it's normal. Like that's when we start to see them become autonomous and be able to take care of themselves and want to have more say. That's when you see the kids being like, no, I want to dress myself, even if they come out in polka dots and stripes. That's normal. That's just part of them growing up. It's part of our normal human experience. And so when you're dealing with really little kids, it's important to remember that you might just be running into like a developmental block. Like this is just where they are. And when you run into this, you might have to do some more psychoeducation to the parents and be like, realistically, no, he shouldn't be biting people. That's the behavior we want to stop. But he's going to tell you no. That's a normal behavior. Ironically, this is also really big with teenagers because I have a lot of parents like, if they just need to listen to everything I say. And I'm like, do you remember when you were a teenager? Did you listen to everything your parents say?
That's unrealistic.
It's unrealistic. We need to make sure that we're having realistic behavioral expectations. Yes, they need to participate in these things, but not to the point that they can't have any autonomy, any expression of that, because it's not realistic for them. They're 16. They need to be able to say stuff, preferably in a nice and kind way. So the next one is lack of attachment to the provider. Attachment is really, really important in providing our therapeutic skills. Research shows that the provider-client relationship is as important as the techniques you use. Like in change. If they don't, like, even if you're the best person in the world, like you've been trained perfectly, if you can't create attachment with your clients, it won't work. They have to have some sort of attachment for you or with you. And that's a difficult one, both for explaining to BHIS providers and therapists, and for explaining to parents, because attachment takes time. You don't just walk into somebody's life and suddenly they're like, yes, this is it. I will trust and believe everything you say and go along with you. Especially if you have kids that have extensive trauma. It's going to take you time to build your attachment.
That's kind of where I'm at right now because I'm still pretty new.
Okay.
And that's building that rapport with my clients and trying not to push it too much.
It's hard because a lot of times you feel like, okay, well, this is session 3. We should be good now, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes for some kids you will, sometimes for some kids, no, you're not anywhere close. And not pushing to move forward before your client's ready is important. And then you'll have parents being like, all you're doing is playing games with them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we have a lot of attachment issues. And right now that's what I need. I need them to trust me. I need them to be able to listen to me. And know that that's a really normal thing. I don't know how much connection you have with your other BHIS providers, but I know that like in therapy, if we're in an office, that's one thing we talk about a lot is like, ugh. I mean, I talked about it yesterday in the office with somebody where it's like, you just need to back off. Try not to do anything in that session and let them lead it a little. And they're like, but I've been seeing them for 3 weeks. Well, that happens. And I have to remind myself too. And I've seen a couple people for 2 years and we still go through attachment repair. The second part is that attachment repair. You might have an attachment disruption. Attachment disruptions are really, really normal. It might be because you pushed too far. It might be because they had a really bad day. It might be because you just ran into a really tough concept or step in their recovery, and the attachment kind of breaks because they freak out a little bit. Normal. You just need to go through a little bit of a repair process. And that is all natural to us as human beings. It's what you do when you have friends. It's what you do with your own parents. If you have kids, it's what you do with them. Attachment breaks and repair are normal. I think when we put it in a therapeutic setting, a lot of people get kind of nervous about it. Like, oh no, it's all over. No, it just needs to be repaired. Anxiety related to the process. So a lot of times you might have clients that have too much too fast. So you might have been doing really, really well on one area, and then you jump to another and you're ready to get, like you're ready to get them with better behaviors in that area, but it's too fast for them and they get anxious and then they back away. Little kids have a lot of anxiety related to the process, but they don't show it like anxiety. And that's really confusing because little kids, they can become hyperactive when they're anxious. They can become less attentive when they're anxious, but very rarely do they tell you, I'm scared. Most of the time, they just start to look resistant, like they don't care. Um, I have one kid that when he becomes anxious in our process, he will in my office flop on the exact same chair. And it's how I know. It's how I know that he's too anxious because he will go and throw himself on the same chair. And watching and learning the patterns of your kids and being like, that's my telltale sign that we're anxious, so
Mhm.
that you can then address a little bit of that anxiety and help them ease through it. And then there's not ready to approach change on a given topic. So you might just reach a point where, like, especially older kids, they might not be ready to talk about this. They might have a trust in you and you might have good attachment, but emotionally they not be ready to talk about something. And all you can do is continue to give the opportunity without being forceful. You want to be like, I'm here to listen, and I've told my teenage clients before, like, we're going to come back to this. I can see you're not ready today, but don't worry, I'll ask about it again. Resistance and parents. And going forward in the slides, you'll notice everything about parents is going to be in orange and everything about kids is going to be in white. Okay. So resistance and parents, not educated or confident in the process. Oh boy, I don't know if you've run into this yet, but not everybody knows what BHIS is. Even if they've gone through the process and gotten BHIS, and so they might think that you're a therapist, that you're a miracle worker, that you're a life coach, that you're a therapist for the whole family, and they just don't know what BHIS does. They expect you to come in and fix everything, and sometimes that includes stuff that doesn't even have anything to do with the kid. They just want it fixed.
I've had
And
where
so
I've come in and they thought that I was like respite, so they were getting ready to leave the house with me with their kids, and I'm like, "No, no, no. Where are you
yeah,
going?"
yeah, that's a big thing. Like, they have oftentimes people who get BHIS have a lot of services and it's all kind of a blur and they don't know what everyone does, but they're like, somebody said this would help my kids, so yeah, come on in. Just do it. You're going to have to provide information on what you do and who you are. And that isn't always the most comfortable conversation. I think with you guys, you have the expectations sheet that kind of explains a little bit. Um, but sometimes parents are like, so you're not going to be here to watch my kids while I go out? And
Mhm.
you're like, no,
Mhm.
no. But we want to work towards a point where, like, if it's a teenager, like, you could do that. Not with me here, but where the
Right.
kid's in a good spot. Education's really big with parents. They just generally don't understand what the process is and aren't sure how it can help. You will also run into parents that have had BHIS before and are just like, it didn't work last time. I don't know why we're doing this. And so you might have to build up a little bit of confidence in them, which brings into the next one, lack of confidence in the provider. You have authority. Not like Eric Cartman level of authority with the glasses and everything. You have authority in the fact that, like, you know what you're doing out there. And if you don't, you have all the resources to help you. And we want you to feel confident with them. And parents will help, will give you better responses if they think that you're confident too. So when you're out there and they're like questioning you, it's okay to be like, I don't know, but I can come back to you with that answer.
Mhm.
It's tough when they're giving you the rundown, but reminding yourself that, like, I am a professional. I know what I'm doing. I have the resources to help me if I have questions. Nobody expects you to know absolutely everything. And you can still be confident in your abilities as a provider if you don't know everything. Why do they do that? I don't know. I don't know why. I'm going to try and find out. That's why we do some of these activities, but I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And then no repair after attachment disruptions with parents. So just like with kids, you can have attachment disruptions with parents, and you might have to do a little repair work with the parents. This happens a lot if they lose faith in your ability as a provider. All you have to do is continue to talk to them and be like, "Yep, we had a really rough session last time. We're going to try again." And present yourself as confident and feel confident. Like, as a company, we want you to feel confident when you're there too. Scared of change. So parents get scared of change just like kids do. Even parents of kids who have really, really, really bad behaviors. So like biting or hitting or can't be in school, running away. They might be afraid to change that behavior because they've just had it for so long. And it's hard to see in the future what it would look like without that. It might be hard for them to change their part of that behavior because that was something that probably predated the kid's behavior. If there's some aspect of what's going on in the household or their parental routine that's aiding in that behavior, it might be hard for them to change that. And it might be hard for them to see what it would look like if they changed that. You'll run into this a lot. I think the best example of it is you'll run into parents that say, well, that's not how I was raised. Fair. I gotcha. And that's that statement of like, I'm scared of change. That's not how I was raised. I'm raising my kid like I was raised. I'm an okay person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're an okay person. But what you've been doing up to this point isn't working. And we want to make sure these behaviors get better. You want these behaviors to get better. I'm here to help you, and we're going to work on it together. But some things have to change, and that can be scary. And then you again run into people who are just not ready to change. They might call for BHIS because they were required to, or because they feel like it's checking off a box, but they're not really invested in the change yet. And those are going to be your high cancel clients. I'm going to tell you right out the box. Those are going to be the ones that are like, oh, yeah, no, I forgot he had a baseball game today. Oh, he's got surgery today. And I'm like, he's surgery? Like, you didn't know this ahead of time? They're the tough ones because they're just not ready. So it's not going to be a priority, or they might intentionally want to avoid it. Okay, so overcoming resistance. There are kind of like 5 steps, but they aren't in an order. There's connection, developing expectations, assessing the relationship, encouraging autonomy, and then repair. You will move through these at different times. Most of the time, it's going to be like 1 through 5, but there are going to be times when you go 1 through 2 through 3 through 2 through 3 through 2 through 1 through 3. It's going to move around a little bit. So don't expect, like, if you've passed 1, don't expect that you're never going to see 1 again. It'll come back. Building a connection with clients. So kiddos, there is a theory. I'm trying to think of it. There's a technique in therapy, especially client-centered therapy, called unconditional positive regard. And it is, I think, one of the best ways to build a connection. And it's kind of a way of you as a provider to be. It's, this is my client. They aren't going to do anything to change my view of them. I view them positively. And regardless of their behaviors, I can view them positively. If they don't reach their goals, I'm still happy and positive with them. I don't have to say like, oh, that's the best thing ever, because it isn't. But I want to let them know that, like, not reaching your goals doesn't make me think less of you.
Mm-hmm.
This is an unconditional positive regard. There isn't anything you can do to change it. I think of you as a good person, period. Some of your behaviors are maybe not the best, but you as a person, fabulous. Love every bit of you. And this will be difficult with some clients, but like really trying to focus your inner self on it and be like, this is a client. Somewhere in there is, a 16-year-old kid or a 10-year-old kid. I may not like everything this 10-year-old kid does, but in there is just a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And that 10-year-old kid has a lot of stuff going on, and so I can still love the 10-year-old kid without loving everything he does. I don't know why, but 10-year-olds, they're the ones that like to test it the most.
That's the age, 10.
That's the age where you're like, do I like humanity? Oh boy, I guess I
Right.
do. Focus on client-centered activities. It's okay to let them lead. We're not teachers. We're not activity personnel. We're not in charge of the cruise ship activities. It's okay if they choose. And that can be really difficult. And in the most paradoxical way possible, the more resistance you have, the more you want to let them choose. And I think that that's just a really hard thing to like internalize, because you want to put up a fight and be like, no, we want to do stuff. And all you end up doing is like butting heads with them, because
Yeah.
you're like, no, we gotta do BHIS. And they're like, no, I'm gonna do Minecraft.
Mhm.
Really, you have to let them have that autonomy and have some of that control. You're running into resistance because of feelings, but those feelings aren't able to be assessed yet. And so you kind of have to go with them a little. I've
I just
told,
try to like tell myself that even though I'm not interested in Roblox and Minecraft, they are. So I try to give it like an actual effort to either play along with them or understand why they get so excited about it, you know?
sure,
It's kind
that's
of hard.
it is. And from a provider point of view, like, you can think about the things that you like in the game itself.
Yeah.
You might not be the biggest fan of Roblox, but like maybe you like a particular aspect of it.
I like that
Or
they can customize their own stuff and kind of make it their own and unique. So I just like focus on that, like how they made it their own and why they did it that way, you know?
yeah. And Roblox is one of those games that has so many choices. Wait,
Yeah.
why did you pick this game?
Yeah.
Oh, because
Exactly.
everybody's in it? Oh, that's interesting. Does
Yeah.
everybody like this game? Is this fun?
I know. Is this fun? Is this life right now? Is this what we're
Yeah.
doing? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look, you got to hit the thing again for
Yep.
money. I don't understand.
So like, did you hear that sound? Did you see me? Yes. You did great.
Yeah. It's important to do all that. That's all what you're doing there is called verbal tracking. And that's important to show that like I'm listening. I see you. I'm listening to you. What you say has importance.
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be super important to me. Luckily, if you're anything like me, just be a child on the inside. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, try and tap into some of that inner child and think from their point of view. This might be very interesting to them. Video games in particular are an escapist.
Mhm.
What are we trying to escape? What is it? If we can build our reality, what does that reality look like? And you might get some insight into their thoughts without them ever having to say anything because of what they've done and what they've chosen. Focus on empathy and validation, not on challenge. So when it comes to building connection, you don't want to start out with those challenging activities right off the bat. You really want to focus on empathizing and validation. A lot of times, if there was a big fight between mom and kid or parent and kid, you will hear about it from the parent usually. They're usually like the minute you step in the door, they're like, and you know what they did this week?
Yeah.
I answer that with a very neutral face towards the parent. If I'm in front of the kid, I want to be as neutral as I can, empathetic and validating to the parent, but I don't want to agree or disagree.
Mhm.
I just want to say, that sounds like it was really tough. Ooh, that sounds like it was a really bad week for you guys. And then when I talk to the kid, I'm going to be like, I heard what mom, or I'm using mom as the example, but mom had to say about this. I want to hear what you have to say. Well, it's exactly what she said. And I'm like, I know, but I still want to hear you say it
Mhm.
because that's important to me.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to challenge those. Like, even if we see that there was a blatant, like, why did you pick up that stick and poke mom with it? That was not a great idea. I'm not necessarily going to challenge that idea. I'm still going to use empathy and validation if I'm building connection, because that challenge is going to put them into a point of resistance, and we don't need to be there. Connection is all about getting closer. We want to lower resistance as much as possible. Okay, orange for the parents. Empathy and understanding to parents. Again, try and have those conversations with parents and kids separately. But that's hard. And I know that's hard in the therapy office, and I know that's even harder when you're in their house because usually they're sitting in the same room together. Sometimes the parents even make them come out and sit next to you or
Mm.
in the room with you. Just be empathy and understanding to the parents. At the end of a session, when I did BHIS, I always tried to go and talk to the parent for a minute alone and be like, hey, it sounds like things are really tough. I get these behaviors are not making things easy. You had a different expectation of that outing than getting poked with a stick. Give them their chance to have their say too, because sometimes that's what they really need. They need somebody to listen to them and kind of say like, you didn't you didn't do anything wrong. Or sometimes they just have to say like, yeah, that's really terrible. Like this is not what you thought out of parenting. When you held that little baby, you were not thinking that this is the spot you were going to be.
Mhm.
And that's okay. We'll get there. Discussing the process, um, as silly as it sounds, like this was a really hard one for me to grasp. Like I wanted to keep the process hidden for some unknown mental block reason. And I didn't want to tell parents that there was a long period of connection, like where we would have to build rapport. That doesn't help. Let parents know. Like from the get-go, that be his expectation should have in the top line. There's going to be some time where I'm going to have to just build rapport.
Mhm.
Change isn't overnight. I have to get to know this person before we can work on any kind of progress. So let them in on that process. Let them know. Give your little status updates to the parents and be like, hey, today we just worked a little bit on discussing, sharing emotions. We didn't do any challenge. We were just talking to each other. And then express confidence. When they come back and they're like, all you did was talk. All you did was play Roblox or watch them play Roblox. Be like, yeah, but I think it was really important to them this time. And if they want to change, they have to think that I like them. They have to know that I like them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that takes a couple sessions. So developing expectations is just like it sounds. Set your expectations ahead of time. I like to do it at the beginning of appointments. You can't plan for everything, but you can give a general outline. You can let them know, especially as you get to more structured sessions, like first 15 minutes, I'm going to watch you play Roblox. Totally up to you, whatever you want to do. And then we're going to move over into doing this worksheet. And you show them the worksheet and be like, this is what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes. I say 15-minute increments because ours are only 45 to an hour. You might have longer periods of time. And then you want to avoid coercion. Like, okay, if you do this, then you can do that. There's a difference between setting our expectations and coercing. Setting our expectations is us saying exactly what we're going to do. If we can finish this worksheet by 1:45, then we can watch Roblox until the end of the time, too. It's different than once you finish this worksheet, then we can watch Roblox. You've already set that expectation out there ahead of time. You're not using it as a like, you need to get through this. And you can be mindful of those expectations. You can give them multiple prompts and be like, hey, remember what we talked about? I know you really want to get to that part, so let's focus on this. That's not coercion. That's reminding of expectations. Coercion is just when we're trying to manipulate. And then you're going to encourage your clients to take on responsibilities slowly. So this is really fun with clients with tons and tons of trauma because you'll kind of go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But I think the best example I have is I have a 10-year-old where the first time we played games together, he was allowed to do whatever he wanted. He was allowed to hide cards in his sleeve. He literally did that. He was allowed to rearrange the deck so that he always won. And we did that for months. And then the next step was I started calling him out on it. I didn't stop him, but I'd say like, that feels like cheating. That feels like you want to change it so you can win. You can win without that. And then the next step was me being like, nope, I'm not going to go forward. You have to put that back. This is where we are, by the way. And we've had to go back a couple of times. But that encouraging of him to take on more responsibility. Like I've set the expectations. I do it at the beginning. I'm like, okay, this time we're going to do it without any hiding of cards. And then in a kind way, like, I don't have to be mean. I'm just like, nope, not going to go forward, and reminding him, like, I like you whether you win or lose. I want you to win because you win. You can win. You've done it before. And it takes a minute. And then, it's so happy when they actually do it. And you're just like, yeah.
They're so proud. Yeah.
Developing expectations with parents, set realistic time frames, keep parents aware of the process, and introduce family activities and steps. I think with BHIS, one of the best ways to do it is don't have an entire session dedicated to family activities for your first family session. You guys have a little bit of flexibility in your billing. So like do an hour and a half of individual and then a half hour of family and work your way up into those families. Get families to be a part of what you guys have already started before like starting an entire family, just separate family activity. And a lot of that is because you might know the kid really well. You might have developed a good connection, but you don't know the dynamic between them very well. And to help avoid breaks in your connection, bring the parents in slowly. It might be just a half hour the first time. Then maybe you might be able to plan an entire 2-hour session based off of just family. Use that fact that you have some flexibility in your billing to help out. Assessing the relationship, ABA, always be assessing, always be kind of monitoring. You're going to feel it. This is not a scientific feeling that you get trained on. You're going to feel it in your gut like, oh yeah, we are just not on the same page today. And then you're going to feel it like, man, that was such a great session. I feel so warm and fuzzy on the inside. Be aware of that. You don't necessarily have to act, just be aware. Be aware, not afraid of regression. Everything was going dandy. All of a sudden it's not. It's okay. Those are great to put into your notes and be like, we had a bit of regression today. Client was resistant, showing similar resistance to when they first started sessions. Validate clients' progress and regression. Make regression normal for clients too, because they can feel it. They have inner feelings just like you do of like, this wasn't right today. And you can say it. You can be very frank and be like, yeah, this doesn't feel very good today. We're not on the same page. We're not doing a good job today. I feel like we're in different places. Whatever the age group is, make it appropriate. But like you can acknowledge and be like, that happens sometimes. Make that a part of the normal process. Sometimes clients are afraid of regression, and what you'll see is they'll start out regressing naturally, and then they'll panic and they'll just whoosh, all the way down to the beginning. And they might have had experiences in their life, usually with guardians, where if they do a little bit of something wrong, it gets turned into a big something wrong, and they don't feel like they have control over it. And so they kind of become this self-fulfilling prophecy of, oh, this session didn't go good. Now I'm going to just completely go downhill and nothing ever is going to be good. And so when you're validating that and being like, that's okay, we'll have another one, on Thursday. I think Thursdays is going to be much better. Setting some of those expectations and reminding them like, not everything's perfect. Again, always be assessing with parents. Address any sudden changes in the relationship. Don't be afraid to address them. Like, parents are acting suddenly very weird to you. It's not the most comfortable thing to be like, hey, I just want to check in on you. Is everything okay? I got a vibe, but I couldn't tell if it was just me. And most people respond really well if you do a bit of internalizing where it's like, I don't know, I drank weird water in the car. Was it just me? No? Okay, good.
Mhm.
And kind of just having that conversation with them, because they probably want to talk to you. If it isn't just you, then they want to talk to you, but they don't know how. And then validate clients' progress to the parents. And this is when you're going to do a lot of like, I can see that you were really working on it this week. He was so much of a better listener. He did a really good job. He told me how much he loved spending time with you this week. That was our whole conversation. We talked for 15 minutes about that. And really give them some motivational interviewing is what the technique is called, but it's really about like, hey, you're a part of this. You're doing this. I can validate that for you. I'm only here 2 hours a week. So those other hours where this kid lives with you is working because like, hey, I can see it in these just 2 hours. Encouraging autonomy is important with all clients. Begin with client-centered activities. If you have resistance clients, you want to give them as much control in that activity to begin with as possible. So you're going to make really, really loose expectations on them. So it might be like, I am going to watch you play Minecraft for 30 minutes. And I am only going to talk to you when you ask me a question. And you're going to make it silly and see, like, you want to give them autonomy. That's me. I'm still being directive, and we're going to talk about directive and non-directive later, but I'm still being directive by setting rules, but I'm really encouraging them to be the one who engages with me. Like, you have to, I've never seen this game. You have to tell me what I'm looking for. You know, get them to be engaging with you, but give them a lot of control. Ensure that there's some client autonomy in directed activities. So even as you go further on, you really want to avoid falling into that teacher role. You want to make sure that there is client autonomy in there. Sometimes you'll go from being that teacher in the middle of a session. You just want to come back out of it and make sure that there's autonomy at the end of it. There's a lot of different ways that you can have kids express that they're the ones in charge. You can have them pick the music for an activity. You can have them show you something. You can have them help plan the next session. Like, what are we going to do next session? What's this going to look like? You really want them to have some say in it because they're the agents of change. And when I say that, I mean, like, your job is really more of like an archaeologist. You're just like digging for the change in there. It's already there. They have it. You just have to like dig it out and shine it up and be like, but look, here it is. And so making sure that they know that they're the agents of change in little ways can help you. And then respect and praise autonomy. Oh, you didn't like that. Oh, I see now that you did not like that. Oh, this is not your favorite activity. I understand that. You know, you want to respect and praise the fact that they have say in things. It may not be what you wanted them to say, but you can still say, like, I got it. You thank you for letting me know. Thank you for letting me know you hate me today. Fair enough. I've had to say that before. Yeah, thank you. Teach parents about the importance of autonomy. Remind them that it's a normal part of our development to want to be more autonomous. Encourage them to find ways for their kids to be autonomous. And it can be really silly. Weighted choices is a really good way to do it. Encourage parents to give choices. Like, do you want broccoli or carrots? You got to pick one. You know, let them have the autonomy. Like, they may not eat either of them, but at least have the autonomy to pick between those two when you're trying to get them to eat more vegetables. That was the only thing that could come to my mind. And then prepare parents for ways they can encourage some autonomy. So again, like, let them know autonomy is normal. Kids want to have say in things. That's a normal experience. You want them to express themselves in healthy ways. You want them to tell you, no, I don't want to play with that kid versus biting that kid. I don't know why I'm picking on biters today, but, you know, like, it's
an unwanted behavior.
It's an unwanted behavior. But the saying no, we want the parents to accept that. That's a good way to do it. That's no, I don't want to be over there. Versus, I'm going to just do it until I'm put into the position where I'm so stressed out that I'm going to bite. Okay, repair. Acknowledge breaks in connection. We talked about this a little. Acknowledge breaks in connection, step back and reestablish connection, and avoid rushing forward. It can feel great when you feel like you have a great connection. You don't have to put like 110 and rush into it. It's okay to still like encourage that autonomy. It's okay to still have client-centered activities, even if they're willing to do what you want them to do. You want to make sure there's a good balance. And then with parents, acknowledge parents' break in connections or lack of faith in authority. Acknowledge that maybe you didn't have a great session together. Discuss process of repair with parents and encourage them to practice repair. I like to tell them before something happens. Like, I will straight up tell them, I'm like, there are going to be times when we do not always agree on something, and that's okay. Like, this is a tough process. There's going to be moments where you might not be the happiest with me, but I want you to know that as a professional, like, I'm always acting in your best interest. I'm here to help, and I'm going to come back and we'll talk about it later. And I expect that to happen. It helps them feel less shame and intense emotions about it when it does happen. If you kind of prepare them and be like, that's okay. Yeah, that's happened before. So this is play therapy techniques to address resistance. Yes, even with parents. So these techniques can be used with parents. And since you do family activities, I highly suggest you use them in parental activities. Secretly, somewhere deep inside that parent is a child. Sometimes you have to dig even further to find it. But there is a child in there, and play is really natural for all humans, no matter their age. So you might have to help a parent explore some of that childlike behavior and help them understand what it's like to go back to being young, which is fun because that can bring up a whole mess of trauma. Okay, so this is the continuum of play therapy. TM. I'm trademarking this. I'm joking. On one side, we'll see that there's non-directive, and on the other side, we'll see directive. Non-directive play therapy is where you do not direct any part of it. You don't ask questions. You just you have a room and the kid just plays in it. And you don't ask any questions. Everything you say is very validating. It is entirely client-led. On the other side of that is directive play therapy. And directive play therapy is where you are telling them exactly what to do. We are going to do this worksheet. You need to tell me 3 times you felt sad and 2 times you felt happy today or this week, and write it down in here. That's highly directive. Most of the time, you're not going to be on completely one side or the other. Most of the time, you're going to be somewhere in the middle. Kind of closer to the non-directive is that client-led sessions. So those are going to be oftentimes your first sessions. Show me what you have. Show me what it looks like. Show me what's your favorite part of this game. I'm still being directive because I'm asking a question, but I really want it to be as much of their side as possible. Next is going to be some structured client-led activities. So you might say okay, this time we're going to do 15 minutes of Roblox and 15 minutes of drawing. And you're structuring, those are both activities that the client is going to lead. The client's going to decide what you draw. The client's going to show you what they want on the video game, but you've now structured. And you've added a new directive to this. We're going to do it within this time period. And as such, you're going to take on a little bit more of a role because you'll start calling time out. You'll be like, okay, we got about 5 minutes before we transition. 10, we got 2 minutes before we transition. Okay, wrap it up. This is our last minute before we transition. And you're not going to be militant about it, especially if you have highly resistance clients. What usually happens in transitions is you have to be really, really affirming, but at the same time, going through the process, okay, we've turned off the game. Yes, I know you're upset about this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your paper, oh, you crumpled that paper up. Okay, I'm going to crumple mine up and then try and draw on it too. Transitions are hard. I get it. You want your point is just to add that structure in. It's not necessarily to direct the activities themselves. And then as you get on, you'll want to introduce provider activities. And usually it's best if you can kind of Oreo sandwich your client-led with provider, then client-led. And you want to put a not super appealing one at the beginning. So when you structure, you're going to be like, okay, we're going to do our 15 minutes of drawing, because you know that they like drawing, but they are not as crazy as they are about video games on it.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be like, we're going to do 15 minutes of drawing, and then we're going to work on the sheet I brought. And then once we're done with the sheet, we're going to play the game for the rest of the time. But when we do our sheet, we have to, and sometimes you might have to set time limits. Okay, we're going to work on our sheet until 45. And then we'll play games for the rest of the time. Some kids, they want to get to the game so bad that they'll just rush through the sheet. You might have to do time limits instead of just activities. Structured shared leadership. Sounds exactly like it sounds. It's a structured activity where you guys have shared the leadership in it. You take the lead on some activities, they take the lead on others. And then structured provider-led. Oftentimes, those are going to look like your highly structured family sessions. like Jeopardy, emotions Jeopardy with family is going to be a really highly structured thing. It's very directive on what's going to happen. You pick the activity, you're leading the activity, they are participants in the activity. That's going to be a structured provider-led activity. Knowing this continuum is important because anytime you're with a client, any activity that you want to bring in, you're going to put it somewhere on this spectrum. And we'll talk about some different activities and how you can find out where they are. How to use the continuum of play therapy. When developing connection, focus more on client-led activities. The connection is going to happen at the beginning part of this. You're probably going to get the most therapeutic value somewhere. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Okay, you're going to get the most therapeutic value usually somewhere in this area. This might be important for like psychoeducation. Like we really just need to learn some words or some concepts. We need to be able to identify what anger looks like maybe. But your connection is really going to happen over here. And your activities are going to vary widely. Like when I say they start at the beginning, it doesn't mean that you're just going to go do and then this way. That's why it's not a timeline. It's a continuum because you can go back on it. Different activities are going to be in different places. Move slowly towards more directed sessions. It's not a super fast thing. It's not like session 1, client-led, session 2, shared, session 3, me leading. It's a slower process than that. Don't be afraid of going back on the continuum. And then progress towards different goals might have different places on the continuum. Your progress towards identifying emotions might be in the shared leadership. You guys can work through activities together where you guys are working. Like there's an activity I play with kids where like we write emotions on postcards and put them up on the wall. And then they have to go and put stickers. So I'll tell them an event and they have to put a sticker on what feeling they would feel. So I've got like these little butterfly stickers. That's a shared leadership. I'm directing it, and then I'm giving them some autonomy in the fact that like I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. If I say like you're at a birthday party and you get a big piece of cake and they say I'm angry, I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, that's not right. You would be angry at a piece of cake. I'm going to say like, okay, go put that one on the angry one. That's where you might be for emotional identification. On building resistance to no, like having a kid be able to accept the word no, you might be like way down here. You might be at the point where like no's come and you guys are just acknowledging them versus not having an explosion. But you might not be able to work on an activity where no is a part of it because they can't handle that. Parents in the continuum, show and explain play therapy techniques to parents. There are so many great resources out there. I believe we have some on our resource drive. You can always ask me, look online. Sometimes parents have a hard time thinking of play as therapy. They have a hard time thinking of play as anything other than that kid having fun, and that's not work. They believe that work and play are separate. That's a hard thing to get them over. You can provide them with information and be like, no, this is like proven. This is something that's real. This is us talking to them in their language and trying to help them get further. And a lot of times I have to tell parents, like, I know you worked really hard to try and get this fixed, and it looks like I'm just playing. I'm trying something different. It's something different that's been tested. They say it works. I want to know if it works with Joe, is the kid. I want to know if it's going to work with this particular kid, and we're going to try it out. It's going to look weird. It's going to look like I'm playing and having fun. And that's okay. Like part of this process is that. Help parents identify why and where we are on the continuum. Like you can show them like, hey, we're not quite there yet. We're still working on just being able to get through a session. Or, hey, now, going back to my 10-year-old, now we can direct, like if we're having behaviors in the middle of a game, we can direct without us having a complete meltdown and quitting the game. We're now in the more directed section. He's made a lot of progress. Oftentimes you have to reflect your progress to them and be like, at the beginning of the sessions, we were at this where like, even if I said, anything, they would blow up. Like it had to be completely the client led. Now yes, we still have blow ups, but there's so much less.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough for parents. And I will honestly tell you that one of my one of my most exciting and frustrating moments I had was with another 10-year-old. Telling you those 10-year-olds get me. Where
10-year-olds.
where the guardian told me, like, I just feel so stuck. I just don't understand why we're having these blow ups. And then in the same sentence said, well, we went from having them daily to this is the only one we've had this year. And I'm like,
It's like
validate.
improvement.
This is really frustrating. This blow up was really bad and you're very frustrated about it. But this is the only one you've had this year. I know it feels in the moment like that isn't any progress, but it's so much progress.
Mhm.
And I want you to understand that I get your feelings on this. Like, you still didn't want this to happen. 1 time, 10 times, it doesn't matter. You just don't like it. That's okay. But we still made a lot of progress, and I don't want us to have this speed bump be the thing that breaks the car. You know, like we had another event. We're going to address it, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to try and make sure that we don't let that become back to everyday activity. Parents just need a little bit of coaching too. Remember, family sessions may begin at the middle of the continuum, but should not start on, that's not supposed to say prescriptive, that's supposed to say directive. Should not start at the directive side of the continuum. So family activities should be more in this area when you start. Remember, parents can have resistance just like kids do. Juggling both family and parent emotions. Has anyone talked to you yet about the idea of like you being a vessel or a cup?
No.
Okay. So sometimes Colleen is, I think, if she's not the one who came up with this idea, then she's the one who taught me it. The idea that like when you are doing therapeutic activities with a kid, you're taking in a lot of their aura, juice, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever the liquid is that fills this cup. I'm going to call it kid juice. You know, you put it all in there and you're taking it in. And at first, your cup is going to be kind of small, or it may not be the right size for that amount of juice. And so it's going to feel like a lot. And the more you get to know the kid, the more you can take into it, the more they can pour into you. When you have family sessions, you suddenly are now pouring 2 different juices into the same cup. And you are not immediately going to have a size cup that's big enough for that. You don't know what that
overflow.
Yes. So know that family sessions are going to be a little bit more tricky because you now are managing kid feelings and mom feelings or parent feelings and sometimes added sibling feelings. And you have to play like this game of trying to hold it all in your cup, and your cup may not just be there yet. It's okay. Don't start at the end. Don't start with something that is kind of challenging. Start in the middle. You know, like, hey, we've already started this butterfly project and we made all the butterflies. Will you guys write emotions on butterflies and help us put it up? Versus we're all going to make this butterfly project together, and you get halfway through making one butterfly and one kid has a meltdown and the parent can't stop yelling and you're just mind blown. Make it easy on yourself, make it easy on the kids, make it a recipe for success is usually the best way. I'm going to show you this short video. And this is just one of the ways that you can help explain play therapy to kids. This is just the first section of it. And it's good. You can always remind parents, and again, we do this on the therapy side all the time. I'm not a play therapist, but I can use these techniques to our benefit. Like, and this isn't hidden information. This isn't behind some kind of a crazy paywall. You know, like they can look at this too. This was on YouTube. You can share this video with them. That's totally fine. They are definitely allowed to look at play therapy techniques.
Play is one of our most fundamental activities. Plato said, "It is the essential nature of man to play." In fact, play is undoubtedly the key element in most, if not all, of our favorite childhood memories.
What we know about children developmentally is that their language lags behind their cognitive development. Play is their language. It's how they communicate, just as adults use words.
Play is a child's way of communicating with the adults typically they aren't able to put feeling words or actual words to what they may be experiencing, but through the play they can actually give you insight into what is really happening for them.
Researchers have for centuries observed play and its obvious benefits. Over the past 100 years, mental health professionals have applied the curative powers inherent in play into a form of counseling or psychotherapy with an emerging evidentiary research base called play therapy.
Play therapy is a
No, this is a great video to watch in its fullness, but it's a bit long for us to watch during this. I'm going to tell you right now, you will show this video to somebody and they will tell you, a parent or a guardian, and they will tell you, well, he can talk just fine. And you'll be like, yes, I understand that. I know that he could, but the language that he's probably best going to learn in his play, the language that all of us best learn in play. It's why practical experience is important. Like, yeah, you can sit me down in a classroom and teach me how to weld things by giving me a bunch of slides and telling me what number my welding machine needs to be at and telling me exactly where I should touch by diagrams. I'm going to learn best by actually welding something together. I don't know why I think welding.
Hands-on.
Yeah, it's a hands-on part. That's part of our play. It's part of it's experiential. It's us getting that actual experience. Kids do develop language really quick. I mean, kids start talking by the age of 1. You forget as an adult that you came into this world with no understanding of anything around you. And by the age of 1, you can communicate. But it doesn't mean that you're really great at it. You're still best at communicating through your emotions, crying when you're hungry, hugging when you need love. Like, you might be able to say, I'm hungry and I need love, but you don't. That's not the best way for you to express it. And that's pretty continuous throughout life. Like, our nonverbal signaling is a really important part of how we communicate. And play is a really good way to bring out that nonverbal signaling. And it's a good way of starting to connect those words that, yeah, that kid can say they're sad, but can they really connect it with the emotion that they're feeling? We can use some play to help that connection. When I see a kid get disheartened because they think they're going to lose a game, I can suddenly be like, oh, you're sad right now. I think that that's what your face is showing me. And then we can really bring those things together. And we can talk about what that feeling feels like and how we might want to change it. Parents will definitely tell you their kids can communicate. And I wonder, I often think of myself as like if I was a parent for BHIS, I would be that person. I'd be like, he can talk. He's totally fooling you. No, I'm not. I'm not fooled. I know he can talk. We're trying a different way of communicating. So the last section, we're going to talk about techniques and interventions. And I am going to have you tell me a couple of your favorite interventions that you've done, probably just 2. And we'll talk a little bit about the techniques, about how you could change it based off of theoretical clients. I have some imaginary clients in the back of my head. All right, so techniques and interventions for ages 4 to 7. This is my favorite age of kids. I see a ton of 4-year-olds. I love 4-year-olds. It's a passion. But they're really fun because you can't really talk to them very well, and therapy for them looks like a lot of play. But there are still techniques and interventions that you can use with them. So young kids are primarily seen for hyperactivity, aggression, and impulse control. Sometimes you see little kids for depression and anxiety, but because it looks different for them, sometimes parents don't recognize that. What they might see is these behaviors, these aggression, hyperactivity, and impulse control, and there might be an underlying feeling that they just don't see. They're only seeing the behavior part of it. Younger children, we're going to go less verbal direction and more play. The younger the kid is, the more play it's going to be. Once again, this isn't just about their chronological age. If you are dealing with a kid who is autistic, you're probably going to be more on the play side. You're going to need to age down. If you're dealing with a 10-year-old who had extensive abuse and neglect, you're going to need to age down. Especially if you are going to get anywhere near some of the underlying feelings of that abuse and neglect. As soon as you start to get close to that, they'll most likely start to age regress. And so you want to age down. 4 to 7 is the guideline, but really it's for people that need high experiential, high nonverbal activities, no matter what their age is. If they just need something that's very young feeling or comforting, this is the way you want to go. You want to encourage movement or sensory stimulation as part of the activity. Walmart has in every toy aisle, so like the Walmart section of toy aisles is like 5 aisles long. Usually like in the second or third aisle, and you might have to go through all of them, they have like their cheap toys where they're like the non-name brand stuff. They sell kinetic sand for $1, and these little containers are about this big. Buy kinetic sand. I wish we could bulk buy kinetic sand for our company because it is one of hands down the easiest things to do for sensory play.
I have like boxes and boxes of kinetic sand in my closet right now with like, some of them have like ice cream scoops with them, but a lot of parents do not want that in their house.
Yeah.
So I have to be very careful about what things I bring into like different clients' houses.
It might not be the first thing you can bring in, but after you've had a couple sessions, sometimes you can kind of coach the parents and be like, look, we're just going to be in the bathroom on that tile over there with our kinetic sand. And if you just give me a broom, I'll sweep it up when we're done.
Yeah.
We can have the whole session in the bathroom or in the kitchen. Or we can, now that the weather is getting better, we might be able to go out to the backyard and just use it there. And explain that like sensory stimulation is really, really helpful. The more of our senses we get involved in our learning process, the better it's going to stick.
I carry around just a bag of sensory toys because I have a lot of kids that get frustrated or, just need something to like bring them back down a little bit.
Yeah. When you have kids that are in the middle of a meltdown, you might notice that they start to stim using sensory items. Like they might start like getting frustrated and squishing something. Yep. It's a really important part of them as children and as us as humans. Like we need sensory input. And the more that we can incorporate that into our coping skills, it doesn't mean that they have to buy kinetic sand. It just means that we're going to use it here as part of our pairing process and to help them focus. Talk to parents, be like, hey, I get you don't want to, sweep it up or anything. I don't know if they still sell those like little dust mops at the Dollar Tree.
Yeah.
Bring one of those and be like, look, I'm prepped. I'm ready for this. They usually just are anxious about it. But I think when they see what the kid can do with it, it feels better. If you can, try and get the parent to play with the kinetic sand. Parents love kinetic sand because they forgot how amazing it was. And then they start touching it and they're like, this is great.
This is so therapeutic.
Movement, sensory stimulation. If you can't do those, there's lots of other ways you can do sensory stimulation. There's this wonderful online article. I have it printed off, but essentially it's the colors meditation, rainbows meditation is what it's called. And I like to do it with like a feather or a paintbrush where it's like I'm painting the colors onto you as we're going through our meditation. That would be a highly directive activity because I'm having them lay still and I'm doing all of this, but I'm also incorporating that sensory stimulation. Sure. And I'm getting them involved through that. And that might be how I get them to lay down and focus. Client-centered should be part of every session when you have little kids. You're going to need to give them some autonomy. Again, this is that prime age range for I'm growing and developing as myself, and I need to have the chance to express myself. If it's like, hey, we're going to do drawing next time, tell me what kind of coloring sheet do you want me to bring? What kind of coloring thing should we do? That's a good way to incorporate autonomy. Hey, show me what your favorite stuffed animal is. Or if they're doing something like 4 to 7, video games are really popular in this age. All right, I want to see exactly what you're doing. I'm going to watch you play this for a bit. And usually they're really responsive because parents don't do that.
Yeah.
Because as a parent, I will tell you, we don't do that. When I'm in a therapy session, I do it. When I'm in a parent role, not at all.
That's exactly how I am too.
You're very busy as a parent.
Yes.
Resistance should be met with acknowledgement and empathy. Oh, I can see you're upset. We'll try this again later. I can hear you don't want to do this. Let's spend 5 minutes and then move on to another activity. I have a kid here that has a whole meltdown whenever we say no. And the biggest success that I can get with him is that if he's still putting on his jacket while he's crying, we are doing great. We are doing great. And the whole time I'm like, I know, I can see how upset I am going to miss you. And I'm so excited for our next one, zipping up the jacket, putting on the hood, it's all good. And usually a good session ends with him giving me a big hug and then being okay. And that's it. Like, I didn't have to tell him to stop crying. I didn't have to stop when he started crying. I just needed to be empathetic and understanding and
Let him
know that,
cry.
yeah, I hear these emotions. I get it. I can reflect that too. Like, I miss you when you're not here. I enjoy our time together. There's consistency in repeated activities. So with kiddos, you're going to want to repeat your activities. It's okay to repeat activities. It's okay to repeat them over and over again. You as a provider, find activities that you like to do over and over again, because it's going to be a part of it. Consistency and repeated activities help provide a sense of comfort. There's expectations. They know what's going to happen. The first time it's new, and then they can kind of get into a role of like, this is the same as it's always been. So then you have those consistency and repeated activities, and you might start to bring in new ones. Remember, at this age, you're probably not going to get huge amounts of time of focus. You might be looking at like 15 minutes max. So have many different activities that you can switch between. Don't come in with like one activity for a 2-hour session for a 4-year-old. Terrible idea. Terrible idea. You want to make sure that you have a lot of different options in your go bag. I would definitely like keep just some stuff that makes like the most random sense, like balloons. You can do so many different activities with balloons. You can pick like a couple of people or animal toys, have them go on adventures, have them put them together in certain ways, have them pick the good guys and the bad guys. You want stuff that you can use multiple different ways.
My daughter's been asking me where all of her toys from upstairs are going. They're all in my trunk. I'm like keeping them hostage right now and using them as missions.
Yeah. Does your daughter do the magnetiles?
So she doesn't have magnetiles, but yesterday we did like the bristle blocks that you build and stuff. And she has like a whole farm one that you have to set the fence up and everything. And man, when I tell you, with the 5-year-old client I had yesterday, that kept us busy for like an hour and a half.
Yes.
Just building different boats and rockets and farms and
They love it. And it's a really good way for them to have direction. I like the magnetiles because my kids had them, but you're right. I had the same thing of like, where are my toys?
Yes.
Okay, I'll bring them back.
I suppose you can have it back.
I thought you were done with it. Kinetic sand squeezes. So this is like the one I'm giving to you is the kinetic sand squeezes. And this is really good for working on following direction if we have resistance to following direction or being really impulsive. And so like I'll use kinetic sand. You can use other sensory objects. You just want something that kind of breaks apart. And so I do it where I have a small section of the sand over here. They've got their big section on their side. They're messing with their sand. And I make a ball and I put it in front of them. Usually at first I start by putting it in front of them. I'm like, okay, are you ready to squish this? And I have yet to meet a child who doesn't want to squish the ball. Everybody wants to squish the ball. They want to squish it really, really hard. And I'm getting them a little hyped up. I'm upping their sense of excitement because I want them to practice this impulse control and this waiting for me to say something. And I'm like, okay, you have to wait until 3. And you'll go 1, and they'll squish the ball. And you'll be like, okay, you know what? All right, I'm going to make another ball. This time we're going to make it all the way to 3. This time I'm going to hold it in my hand. And you're going to go 1, 2, and then they squish the ball. And you're like, okay, we're going to make it to 3. So you make another ball. And this time I'm going to cover the ball with it. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And then they can squish it. And then I'll praise them so much. You made it all the way to 3. Way to go. And we'll do that until they can wait until 3. And we're just building up that muscle memory of like, it's okay to follow this expectation. This is fun for both of us. And really working on that impulse control. Can you just wait the 3 seconds? And as you get further along, you might become, this is prescriptive still, should say directive. You might get further along and you might suddenly start being like, okay, 1, 2, banana. Good job, you got me there. And you're making it more challenging as you go. But it's also like if they're having a rough day and we just need to rebuild communication and connection, maybe we'll just go back to making these balls and just being like, okay, can you wait till 3 to do it? Remember how good you used to be at this. Let's see if you can still do it. And it's a good way of building connection. It's easy to adjust. You can make it more difficult. You can make it less difficult. If you want to make it more difficult and see if they can stretch their waiting time, maybe you'll make multiple balls that they can squish multiple at the end. Maybe you'll make like a snowman that they have to squish straight down. If they need something non-directive, then you're going to make them super easy. And it's going to be just like your hand over it and you're going to be like super silly about it. And then you're going to be like, okay, give me a big squish. Can you squish it with your feet now? Like whatever the case is. It's an easy to move around activity. Okay. Techniques and interventions for ages 8 through 11. Clients might have less outward behavior and may have behaviors that are less clear cut. So you might have clients that scream no and start crying. It may not be just like a single thing that's happening and you're trying to unravel a couple of different emotions there. Are we angry? Are we sad? How are we expressing this? I happen to deal a lot with aggressive clients in this age group, but that's just my client load. I don't know if that's true of all kids in this age group. But at this stage, when you're in the 8 to 11, it becomes more serious. Like all of a sudden the adults in life take things a lot more serious when you're an older kid and you're having these behaviors. And so those consequences may have gotten much bigger. When you have kids with those behaviors, make sure that you are incorporating some of that younger stuff in there because you probably are dealing with a slightly regressed kid. But you can start to incorporate more age-appropriate things too. They're going to be able to focus for longer periods of time. You can have fewer and longer activities. They can have longer periods of self-expression and longer periods of directed activities. You still want to ensure that you're giving autonomy in activities. Kids this age lose a ton of autonomy. That's usually the main consequence they're going to go through is now you can't do this. Now you don't get to choose. Now you have somebody with you in the classroom. Now you have, now you can't go to the bathroom without a teacher there. Like what the consequences for those activities are just a loss of autonomy. And so you want to give them safe autonomy where like they aren't having any behaviors. Yes, of course. Like you're doing so good right now. I want you to experience this. I want you to get this back. Every session doesn't have to have child-centered play, but there should be some time where they're given full autonomy. So you don't have to sit and do the Minecraft watching. I would still suggest it, but you do want to make sure that there is some time where they have autonomy, where they can choose most of the activity, how it goes. Maybe you guys are doing like, oh my gosh, my 10-year-olds love to watch Don't Laugh funny animal videos. Let them browse through the ones and pick what they want. Assess your relationship with the client frequently and build in some challenge to resistance. So not at the beginning, but as you get further along, you do want to start to have some challenge to the resistance. So when you want to talk about school and they're like, no, I don't want to talk about it. You can be like, okay, I totally get you don't want to talk about it. I don't want you to talk about it either. I just want you to nod. Was it a good day or a bad day? Is it a yes or a no? Okay, yes. Okay. Did you eat lunch? Yes. Okay. Did you have pizza for lunch? No. Did you have roast beef for lunch? No. Okay. Did you have mac and cheese? Yes. Okay, sweet. We're getting further. I want to build in. He said, no, we're not going to talk about it. I said, okay, cool. We're going to play a game where I'm only going to get the bare minimum of information. And then
I like that.
Yeah, personally, I also like to add a little bit of encouragement for them to come forward with information, but in a very like gentle way. Like suddenly I'll be like, Okay, did you fly a spaceship? And they'll be like, no. And I'll be like, are you sure? You sure you didn't go on that? And they're like, no.
Mhm.
Or sometimes they'll say yes. And they'll be like, you did? Okay, where did you go in outer space? I'm not going to stop them and say, like, you didn't go on a spaceship. It's
Yeah.
cool. I'm going to go with it. Sure, you want to have autonomy and tell me a story about spaceships? I'm down. Let's go.
Mhm.
So you want more variety in activities. So more variety in activities acceptable at this age. Also finding activities that may take multiple sessions to complete. So as you become better with this kid, you might start to build like Dollar Tree has these like photo journals. They're like the photo albums. That's the word I'm looking for. Maybe you cut papers to fit that and you start building in that and you work on a page at a time and you put new stuff in it. It's okay to have continuous stuff. They usually have a much better sense of object permanence than little kids
Mhm.
do. And so they can bring things from session to session. And the further up you move up that age scale, the more that's going to be helpful to them. Having some of that tangible stuff, a lot of the kids I deal with in this age range tend to have a lot of trauma. Some of that tangible stuff helps bring your sessions through. So, like, if you're not there directly, they can still touch and feel. Again, we're bringing that sensory thing. They can look and
Mhm.
see the things that they've done in between sessions. So, I like to make comic strips. This is my big one. And I don't put at the beginning of this, I'm not going to put any rules on it. I'm going to be like, we're going to make a comic strip. You make it about whatever you want. You just have to fill out the paper. That's all. That's the whole activity is you just filling it out. It really encourages autonomy and encourages storytelling. And storytelling is really, really big for learning what these behaviors are. You need them to be able to tell you their story. And you have a lot of kids that just aren't good at storytelling, either because they've been shut down a lot, or they've gotten in trouble for their storytelling, or maybe they just didn't really ever develop the skills on how to storytell very well. Um, I like this in particular for your over storytellers, like the ones that will take up like a whole crazy story about, oh my gosh, I had a 10-year-old say that the reason he couldn't bring his jacket to school is because a giant wind came and gusted it away as he was getting onto the bus and it flew up into the air and he has idea where it is. And his aunt's like, no, he refused to put it on because he didn't want to put on a jacket. That's okay. Like, at least
Mhm.
we have some storytelling there. I wanna make sure that we're putting it in an appropriate spot. Comic books are great. Show me where this thing got blown away into the middle of the things. I'm not gonna question you about it. I think we don't need to. There's nothing beneficial
Yeah.
from me being like, "That's not true."
It's not harming anything. Yeah.
It's not harming anything. And what we can talk about is like, "Oh, okay, you must have been really cold. I bet you that's why, mom made you wear that jacket
Mhm.
when you went outside. She must have been really worried about how cold you were." And we're gonna bring in some of that psychoeducation without having to necessarily challenge that story. You can make it as you get further along, make it more directive. I've had kids make comic strips about an incident they had at school. I've had kids make comic strips about what they would do if they were a superhero and can solve the problem. There's a lot of ways that you can make this more directive. The least directive way is just to put it down and be like, we're going to make comic strips about whatever. And you can even go even less directive because I had a kid once where we couldn't even start with that. He just had to tell me what to put in the comic strip, and then I had to do the writing and the drawing. And I had to make sure it was really interactive with him. So I'd be like, okay, did I spell this right? Did I draw this exactly how you wanted me to? And then the next time we did it, he was able to draw his own comic. He just couldn't step up into that position that quickly. Okay, so techniques and interventions for ages 12 to 18. What you might see is a lot of anxiety, depression, and traumatic memories. This is a time when impulse control might be better for them. They might have better abilities to control themselves. Not necessarily with BHIS. BHIS gets a lot of kids that even at this age struggle with some big behaviors. But they have better language often to explain themselves. Older children can spend more time of the session in directed activities. Some older children may prefer direction. Some kids, like especially those teenage kids, they don't want to have to think very much. And so they'll be like, well, you tell me what we're going to do. Well, all right. I still want to encourage autonomy at that age and be like, okay, well, then these are my two choices. We can do this
Mhm.
or this, and let them choose which one. Some older children may prefer direction because they aren't invested in it yet. They might just be like, yeah, whatever you want to do, I don't care. We'll just do it. And that's okay too. Like, you don't have to directly confront that. You can be like, okay, well, we'll pick this. And then maybe I'll age down that activity to encourage more interaction with them. So, like, I might pick an activity where we are identifying emotions, but I might give them stickers and write the emotions on different parts of my paper and be like, okay, put that sticker on the emotion that you think you feel there. I've aged down the activity. I brought it back down to a much younger age, but I encouraged their interaction more. And sometimes they need that to be involved. You can explain the purpose of activities at this age. Usually they are at a point where like psychoeducation can be beneficial for them. Like, why are we learning about anxiety? What does anxiety look like? Does it always look like you're afraid of something, or can it also look like you're super angry? Child-centered play may look different now, and it might be more focused on interest sharing. Your child-centered play may not be play anymore. It may be talking. Your child-centered play may be working on a problem together, or reviewing a book, or talking about a movie, and them showing telling you all of their experiences while watching that movie. Older kids and scary movies, really big. And then this happens in the movie. And this happens in the movie. It's interest sharing now. It may not be directly play. Some kids still might be into play. Sometimes it's good to encourage those kids to play. But just know that if they're leading it, it may not look like play in the typical young kid sense. And then building up a connection may take longer and may not be repaired as quickly as with younger children. You have kids that have had a lot longer periods of experience now. They're 12 to 18, they're not 4. They've got 3 times as many years on this earth. And sometimes that means 3 times as many bad experiences. They might have been through 3 BHIS providers before you. You might be number 4. They might have connected with number 1 and 2, and the number 3 they didn't like. And now, why would they even connect with number 4? How long are you going to stick around? You got a lot to work with on there, and that can be tricky. Don't worry about taking longer in your rapport. I think at this age, that connection is super duper important. Most of the time, if you're in BHIS and you are seeing them, they don't have many connections outside of maybe immediate family. They might really struggle at making friends. They might really struggle with making peer relationships. They may not have any good connections at school because of behaviors. They may not have good connections with their parents. Foster kids in particular may have lost all of their connections. You being a stable human being in their life who cares about them and thinks that they're good no matter what they do, you might be the only one. You might be it. And that itself is really reparative for them. That can help them to know that there's somebody out there that still feels that way. And yes, it's your job. But most people, like, if you really don't like a client, please let your supervisor know. Like, if you really cannot connect with your client, let your supervisor know. Because there is some sort of, like, you should like them as a person. You may not like what they do, but you should like them as a person. And that's important for them to believe that you like them as a person. Then the Who Am I is the activity I do with older kids. And I do this by, so I get a piece of paper and I chop it up into little tabs about that big. Like, I don't chop it up because I fold and I do a lot of origami, so I like break it up. And then I have them tell me 3 things that they look, 3 things about their looks, 3 things about 3 things that they're really good at, 3 things that their friends say they like about them, 3 things that they don't like about themselves, 3 things that they show when they're in school. And I make this as long or as short as I need to. But I want them to get a bunch of little papers that have words or phrases on them. And then I'm going to pull out a regular size sheet paper and I'll write on it, I'll be like, teachers. Okay, I want you to show me, using only the cards in front of you, what do your teachers see about you? What of those characteristics can they see? Can they see when you're happy? No. Maybe. I don't know. Are you really expressive? They can probably see your physical attributes. What about your online friends? Can they see your physical attributes? Maybe not. Maybe they see more of your emotional ones because you're really connected to them. It's a good activity to help them see how other people see them and show what they're showing to others. Because sometimes kids have a hard time understanding that, like, well, they just don't see that I'm working my hardest. Okay. I see that. How can we show it? How can they see that? What do they see that's making this image where of you to them? And I really like to do this a lot, and we'll do it over and over again. And you can add as many of those, like, people who see you groups. I've done parents, teachers. I've done with my kids who have involved with law enforcement. I've done judges. I've done victims. It's really about, like, what parts of you did that person see, and how is that shaping what they think about you. If you're like this really cool, diverse, super fun person, but around your parents, all you are is quiet in your room, online, they may not see all of those fun parts about you. And then we can have a deeper discussion, like, why don't you want to show them that? Or if you do, like, how can you? Okay. So then the very last one is alternative resources. And then I'm going to ask you for your two. So real quick, alternative resources, therapistaid.com, favorite place to find worksheets. Really great stuff on there, all free, fantastic. teacherspayteachers.com, also absolutely fabulous. They have a free, you can filter by free. You can pay for it, but they do all kinds of different stuff. youtube.com, naturally. If you haven't seen Art Hub for Kids, I highly suggest it. It's my life and my passion to make that a part of every therapy session. A great way of just drawing with somebody and working through emotions. When I have kids that are super shy, we always do Art Hub for Kids because I want to know what they think about themselves. And as they're drawing and trying to follow instructions, you'll hear a lot of inner monologues start being said. Oh, this isn't really good. Oh, I messed that one up. I'm just so frustrated about this. It's a good reflective activity. And then, of course, on the bottom are our fabulous BHIS professionals. You guys do a really good job of creating these videos. And I absolutely love and adore them. Go through, watch them, try out stuff, talk to each other, talk to your supervisors, talk to your clinical supervisor, therapist person, talk to your coworkers, come into the office if you have an office near you. Like, yeah, we're the best people to support each other are often in this field already.
Mm-hmm.
And we're here and we want to help. And we're always, sometimes to a fault, always ready with more ideas on how we can help. Okay. All right. So give me your first of your two activities that you like.
For one of my clients, she's not very good at losing or being like a good loser, I guess. I don't know how to really say that.
Mm-hmm.
But so we started implementing that if she loses, she gets to come up with a positive thing to say to me, like good game, or you did really good, what she liked about how I did whatever activity we did. And then if I lose, I get to tell her what I liked about what she did so that we can kind of learn how to be like gracious losers. And so that's one of our interventions that we do. So we do that with like playing Uno. Instead of saying like, ha, I won or something like that. We'll say like, hey, you did a really good job. What I really liked is that you did this.
Okay.
She loves to draw. So we do like drawing competitions where we'll get the whiteboard out and she'll draw like a line through half of it. And then she'll say, we need to draw a house, a tree, and the sun. And then we'll see who did better, who won. And so instead of saying who won, we flip the board around and we circle 3 things that we liked about each other's drawings. And then we talk about them. So
Okay.
just kind of to do like positive talk rather than discouraging, like being a sore loser almost. So that's one of our interventions that we're working on.
So that one has a lot of autonomy already built into it. She gets to the drawing one, she picks what you guys are drawing, and then you draw it. And then does she want it to be competition? Is that why she's always like, is a drawing competition?
She likes competition. She likes like racing each other. She likes seeing how, because she knows she's a good drawer and that's like her main strength. And so she wants to like showcase that by doing better than everybody else. So I just try to make sure that she knows that even though she's really good at it, you know, it's okay to not always be good at it, because she'll get after herself if she goes out of the lines while coloring and stuff like that. So we just try to be positive about that. And yeah.
If you wanted to add and like reduce the amount of challenge that she's trying to put into it with the games, you guys might want to try and add in like, at the end of this game, no matter who wins, we each get to eat a chocolate. You know, Easter chocolates are going to be on sale soon.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea is that like we both get this reward. It's the game that's the important part.
Yeah.
And then like I would also kind of hype her up and prep her like, oh my goodness, I'm so excited for this game to end. I really want that chocolate. It's my favorite. It's a Reese's. And I'm like, you know, oh, I hope you win on this round. Oh my gosh, you didn't get it. Okay. We're getting close.
Yeah.
And really make it about the experience that you guys are having and sharing and trying to pull some of that out. And when you do that, don't have your reflective part. So that use that as a separate intervention. So when you have the chocolate, you guys are going to talk about how tasty that chocolate is and how happy you guys and how like you were so excited for it. And you're not going to talk about like, well, what did you do well and what did I do well? You're just going to focus on the chocolate. And it's kind of drawing out some of that ability to go through that game and lower our anxiety about, are we going to win or not? The answer is we're going to win. We're going to win with the chocolate. The chocolate is the prize. We both are getting this chocolate. Whoever wins, we both get it. I would try and make it something that's really appealing to her. If she's not into chocolates, something else that's appealing. But yeah, you want it to be exciting to get to do that. And then you're just trying to remove some of that tension of like, who is going to win? Because it doesn't matter. I've now taken away all of the expectation. There's no winning or losing. Really, we both win when the game is done.
Yeah.
And then you know, alternate that between your like, let's say nice things and about each other and say good games to each other. I love your drawing one though. That one's great. I have no comment.
It's fun. And then do I do another one?
Yes.
With I think all of my clients so far, like during our first session, we've done kind of a get to know you door hanger type of thing where they get to just a blank piece of paper and they get to design like a welcome to my room kind of door sign, and they get to use stickers, they get to use their favorite colors, because then it gives me kind of an insight into what things they're interested in, what things, you know, their favorite colors, their dislikes, kind of what makes them, you know, their own personal type of thing. So that's another one that I like to do. And with me being so new, I haven't done a whole bunch of different interventions with kids. So yeah.
Do you hang it out on the door hanger?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the next step to that would be doing like we're going to do an inside and an outside door hanger. The outside's the one that mom and dad and everybody that walks through the hall can see. The inside one is only one I can see. And at the end of our session, we're going to decide whether or not we want to rip it up or we want to keep it.
Yeah.
And so kind of getting some of the idea of like, I accept that you have two different sides to you, that what everybody else sees may not be what you feel on the inside. And I want you to have a safe place to express that. Yeah. And then if they want to rip it up, then you can tell them like you can put whatever on it. With older kids, sometimes I'm like, if you really want to curse on it, you can.
Yeah.
And then make it a ritual of the ripping up of like, okay, we're going to rip it up really, really, really good. And then you're going to like put it in your bag and be like, I'll make sure nobody sees this. If that's what they want to do, that way you can encourage that connection aspect of like, you can pour into me. You can share some of these things with me. And I'm not going to not like you for them. I'm not going to judge you for them. I'm not going to challenge you on them. I'm just going to keep them, see them, keep them, and put them away.
Thank you for joining in on today's training. We look forward to having you join us again. Heart & Solutions is proud to provide CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below.